Welcome to Feminine Power Time, where wisdom, leadership, and well-being meet. And welcome to episode 8 of 9 in this special season 8.5, the season of light. I'm Jennifer Alexander, co-curator and guest host for this season, which is running in June, July, and August. But whenever you're listening, trust that you're receiving this in the perfect season for you. If you're new here to Feminine Power Time, welcome. We're so glad that you found us. And if you're a longtime listener, thank you for coming back week after week to be in this conversation. It's been such a pleasure and such an honor to be here with you all and with Christine during this season of light. We're really in this real-time experiment of the feminine practices of co-creation and grafting. We're holding space here on the podcast for us to gather during this season to stay light. And a quick reminder, what is staying light? It means to stay centered, calm, and clear, to be radiant, resilient, and rooted, even in the midst of the swirl of the outside world. And it's not about spiritual bypassing. Instead, it's a way of living and utilizing our practices in order to come back to our light, even when we get wobbly. And trust me, all of us get wobbly. We're human beings. We're having a human experience on this beautiful planet Earth, and it's definitely not about being perfect and maintaining some high level of vibrational consciousness all the time. It's about being human, having emotions, having thoughts, and seeing them in order to transform them and elevate from wherever we are, so that we can show up differently as leaders in our own lives, in how we use our voices, our choices, and our presence in responding to life as it unfolds. Our topic for today is the power of co-creation. And we're building upon last week's episode on the superpower of catalyze, in which we conversated on releasing what's no longer needed and embracing the call to shift. And so this week, we're focused on another facet of the triangle of transformation, which, as a reminder, that triangle has release, preserve, and create, or better said, co-create. So we're focusing today on the co-creation piece. We'll be conversating around 3 principles of co-creation, how we co-create with the universe and each other to bring our desires from essence into form. There is so much wisdom in this episode, and so be sure to have your journal handy. I invite you to press pause on the outside world and dive in with us today. Here's Christine.
Welcome to Feminine Power Time. This is Christine Arilo, your host, and today is all about one of the most powerful superpowers we have right now on this planet, which is our power of co-creation. And I'm going to get to that in a little bit of what I mean by co-creation, but specifically the series is dedicated to how do we access and apply our co-creative power to create the reality that we desire for ourselves and that we desire for others and that we really desire for this world, whether that is the bigger culture, it's our organizations, it's our teams, it's our families. This power of co-creation is no woody doody poo poo shoo shoo. This is like for real, like this is in you, it is in me, it is in every person on the planet. However, for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, conveniently, all kinds of crazy things have happened in this world to either divorce us from the knowing or the trust in this power, or we have become so over-focused on achieving and accomplishing and driving and manifesting that we've taken it all on our own shoulders. And the thing with co-creation, notice the word co before create. It's not just about you or I going in the world and manifesting something. Interestingly enough, if you look at the word manifest, it means at the root, it means to declare. It's connected to the, back in the 17th century, a list of ship's cargo or goods. It's like a manifesto, a public declaration. So it's like when you say, I'm going to manifest this, it's like you can just even feel my energy. It's so, there's a forcefulness, a declarativeness to it. And while that could be really powerful to stand in our truth and our power of what we want to create, the reality is it's freaking exhausting to create that way. And it's also honestly kind of full of ego to think that we could go out in the world and we can just make things happen the way we have listed it out on our cargo list. It's like, this is why the whole, like, I'm going to like manifest my man, or I'm going to, and you might actually get there. I have clients who are like, I decided I was going to manifest $1 million and I created $1 million business. And I'm like, and how well did that business, align with who you are and what you desired and what your design is? And the truth was, what they were able to say to me is, Christine, I got there. I made the dollar amount that I said I would do, that I put on my list. And I was exhausted. And worse, it wasn't even really in alignment with who I am and what and how my heart and soul are designed to be on the planet. Take a breath. So we've all done that. And, you can operate that way. There's nothing necessarily wrong with it. It's just a certain level of consciousness. There's also another way, which is, we call it the work hard way. This has been indoctrinated into us for thousands of years as well. For any of you that have the Overwhelmed and Over It book, go to the chapter on instead of working hard to succeed, it's working wise to thrive. It's like in this third section, and you'll see a picture in there of a woman who's working hard. And the word work hard literally means to toil. And she has like these boots on and she has everything on her back. And it's interesting, if you look at the word do, and for those of you that are new here, if you're wondering, why is Christine spending the first 5 minutes of this podcast talking about language? It's because I believe strongly in etymology, and that when we can gain access to different language, it gives us the opportunity to access higher levels, elevated levels, I like to say, of consciousness and understanding and perspective. And that's what we do here at Feminine Power Time. This is about looking at where our power is for you and I to actually show up in this world at this time, living our design, and not just recapitulating the crazy banana world that we see and all the things not working, but also not exhausting ourselves in the process of trying to change it all and putting it on our back. And also not just going to sleep about it either. We have so much more power, you all. That's why this is called feminine power than we know. And feminine power, just to underline this, and we'll dive into this in some of the principles today. I'm going to share with you 3 or 4 principles once we kind of get through this definition part, is that these principles are led by the feminine. They're led by the yin. They're led by the water. They're not led by the hard driving masculine. And we have both of these parts inside of ourselves. And most of us have overused the masculine. Our culture is over masculinized. It overvalues it. And so we overuse it. Or when shit gets hard, we lean into the masculine instead of allowing the feminine. And my role, my job with all of us here is to like translate that very esoteric yin, feminine, water, right? Like in a way that's actually very practical. I wanted to imbue the field and imbue each one of us, every single one of you that's listening right now. You are connected into a much bigger community of people who are awake, who are deciding a desire to create a better world, and not just to go out there like, banshees raging against something, but to really do what I call work well, work wise, live well, create a better world. And we each have a part to play. You have a part, I have a part. And the wisdom teaching is really clear. If we each play our part and we each stay open in our hearts, and we open not just to ourselves, but also to others, and also to the universe, the force, divine, spirit, whatever you want to call it, but this bigger collective force that is here with us, then this whole thing can shift. We can and we will rise together. The wisdom teaching is the momentum of the ages is behind us, and we are going through kind of the last vestiges of just like, the darkest time to because it doesn't want to let go of control. And so the more of us that embrace our co-creative power, not in some magical thinking kind of way, and not in some ungrounded kind of way, but like literally as a practice. This is how I've been living for over a decade in the feminine wisdom way. I took all of my sacred feminine training, all of my yoga training, all of my training from all these esoteric places, and I like kind of combined it with my MBA self and developed a structure that we'll talk more about the cyclical living, which is one of the practices that I use and have used for a decade, and that this podcast is also part of. It's actually a key practice, key foundational practice of co-creation. But before we could get to the practices, I wanted to set the principles today with all of you, just to kind of set the baseline. Some of these you might know, some of them you might not know. But if you're up for really opening up to how this co-creative power, even if you're already doing it, can support you even more, then I say we do this together. Does that work? Okay. So I have a candle lit for us on my altar here, and it is sitting on the candle, of course, the little thing that says, be the change you wish to see in the world. So we're going to bring that in. I have some water here. If you want to grab your water or tea, that is good as well. Just I'll take a deep breath together. And just let's intentionally slow everything down. Whatever you can do to do that. As it turns out, the co-creative process doesn't work on Google speed. I'm staring out my studio window here in Asheville, and I'm just looking at the trees. This is actually a great co-creative process, is to get yourself attuned and harmonized with nature and what it's doing. And I'm looking at these trees, and they're just really still, and they're shedding some leaves, and some of the trees are going to keep their leaves, and it's just reminding me of this co-creation time that we're moving into next week, which is a time of shedding and letting go and going inward, and so much wisdom in nature. So that's one way we can slow ourselves down. Maybe even if it helps to just visualize a tree or close your eyes and feel your body as a tree, rooted, open, here now. Almost like we're doing a mini meditation together. I played some mantra and sang to the mantra, I am, while I was doing a little yoga before I came here to be with you all. It's another co-creative process, is using sound and mantra. It actually, when you chant mantra, it tunes you like you're an instrument, and it tunes you to what's called the Naad. And the Naad, which has two A's, Naad, is the primordial sound and rhythm and beat of the earth and the cosmos and the universe, of which we're all a part of. And so it's like attuning yourself and tuning and harmonizing yourself with yourself, the I am, but also with the natural rhythms. So for any of you that have not ventured into the realm of mantra or sound, one of the core practices I use in all of my retreats, my leadership, coaching, councils, etc., we always are working with mantra because it's so powerful. And so I give those to you to play with. So let's just start with, I told you about the definition of manifest. So I'm going to read you this definition of create. So create means to cause to come into being as something unique that would not naturally evolve or that is not made by ordinary processes. To create means to evolve from one's own thought or imagination as a work of art or an invention. Or in theater, it's to perform a role for the first time or in the first production of a play. So as we go into this series in this podcast today, I want to invite you to open up your consciousness to what you might be, or your kind of higher self might be guiding you to cause to come into being as something unique that would not naturally evolve or that is not made by ordinary processes. Something that's calling you to evolve from your own just kind of normal thoughts into the place of imagination as a work of art or an invention. I'm thinking right now about a woman that I did some leadership coaching with, and and this is a lot of the leadership clients I work with, they're experts in their field, and they've been doing what they've been doing in their field for a long time. But yet they know that there's something that was ready to elevate, to expand, something that kind of wants to come through them. Some of them really know what it is. It could be a project, it could be a training, it could be a body of work. Some of them don't exactly know what it is, but they know that they're like really being called to embody more of their influence and leadership. And what I've seen every single time, and I've seen this for myself too, is that this is where that creation comes into place, is that we're choosing to create something that doesn't yet exist. And it's not just like you can go to Walmart and buy it off the shelf or go onto Wayfair and order it. It's like you got to choose it, right? I'm choosing to create this thing. It's like when I go to pottery and I'm like, I got a slab of clay there, and I'm like, and I have kind of an idea. I want to make these pots for these plants that are going to help me bring in and call in my next home, which is what I literally did. It's a co-creative process. I did this back in May, and I made 3 pots, and I kind of let them show me what they wanted to be. And they turned out lovely and wonderful and whimsical. And I'm like, these are holding space for my home, which I'm now sitting in, to come into physical form. That's another co-creative practice, right? Of actually making something with your hands. It could be pottery, it could be a painting, it could be whatever form you might want to do. And that create, what's different about creating versus manifesting or achieving and accomplishing. And again, manifesting, not bad if you want to have to declare it and that helps you. But there's a way that creation requires devotion, and creation, it requires commitment, but it allows, and we're going to talk about this today, it allows for fluidity. So when I sit down with that clay, because I'm in co-creation with my own desire, my own intention, but I'm also in co-creation. So notice co goes before create. So it's not just me, like I'm going to sit at the wheel and I'm going to make five plates, like, and it's going to look like this, and this is how it's going to look. And I have like this very regimented thing that I'm working on. I kind of more like go in with an idea of like what I might want to create. And then I let the clay, so I'm in relationship with the clay. Co-create requires, this will be the third principle we get into today, it requires a relationship. So I'm in relationship to the clay, and I'm listening to the clay, and the clay is telling me what it actually wants to be. And I'm listening for what, I'm feeling inspired by. And then when I am in a class with other people, I'm also kind of in a co-creative field with these other people, which inspires me and my co-creativity. And then ultimately, I'm in co-creation with the universe, with, for me, what I would call the divine. And but you call it whatever you want, the universe force, but something bigger that we're co-creating. And you'd be like, well, what's the big deal, Christine? You're just making some pots. And I'm like, well, I'm actually in a process of these pots telling me what they want to be. And part of the reason I do the pottery is to help me get out of this. I have to declare it and intend it and then do it. So to accomplish or achieve means to bring some action to a conclusion. And I actually love the word achieve because I love bringing things to a conclusion. And I love to say, I achieved this or I accomplished it. But I don't want to be driven by my achievements and my accomplishments, because in a way, nothing I've ever done has turned out exactly the way that I saw it in my head or in my mind. If I was just focused on accomplishing something or achieving something, what happens is we get myopically focused on the goal. And that's when we drive and we push and we grind, or if it doesn't work out that way, it's like, and oftentimes it doesn't work out in the timing or the form we desire. So kind of just playing with this loosely of like what I'm saying, what I'm inviting you to do is to bring the word co-create into your life, and to bring the energy of co-creation and celebrate achievements, celebrate accomplishments when you hit the milestones and when you hit the goals, but don't be driven by them. And this is going to be the first principle because it's like getting a little esoteric now. So let me bring this down. Okay. So principle number 1, when you're co-creating, you want to be clear on the intention and the need and kind of focus on what the center point is, what some people might call like the big why. Like, why am I doing this? And when you're clear about what's at the center, so kind of like almost like think of it like a circle that has a dot in the center of it. And when you know what is at the center, at that center point within the circle, what happens is, esoterically speaking and mystically speaking, it's like you put a stake in the ground and you say, I'm going to stand here. I'm intending this. I'm committing to this. I'm devoted to this, and I'm going to be in co-creation with this. I don't know exactly how it's going to look. I don't exactly know how it's going to come out, but I'm clear this is my intention. So an example would be many, many, many years ago in 2007, when I took the job from the universe and said, go out, and teach women and girls how to love themselves. And I said, you're crazy. Can I teach leadership or well-being? Which is funny because that is what I do now and what I've always wanted to do. But I've learned so much about leadership and well-being because I've also said yes to the self-love. And my intention at the center of all of the self-love work was always to make self-love accessible to all people, to make it accessible, to make it understandable, to make it as normal as table salt. And so that was always at the center. And I had to say, yes, I choose this. I commit to this. And you can almost I can feel my hand kind of standing almost like there's a flag or a staff in the center. And when we make that commitment from a place that's both convicted, but you also have to be open in that place of humility, which manifesting, I'm going to manifest this. It could have some humility, but generally it's not so much, right? I'm like, I don't know how to do that. How am I going to go out one little person and, and like get self-love to all of these different people? I remember I actually still probably have it somewhere. This drawing I did, because visual thinking is a practice that we use in co-creation. We'll talk more about that in a couple weeks, but it's primary because you got to get the stuff out of your head and you got to get it down to where you can see it. And so this is like why every year during the emerge process, the visioning process, we end with a vision altar that has the purpose for our year, our intention, our center point for the whole year. This year for me is purposeful patience. And so the color and the image and all that brings that to life. So for self-love, I had this, it was a web, and in the center was make self-love accessible and understandable to all, make it as normal as table salt. And it was this web that said self-love in the prison system, self-love in education, self-love in all these places. Well, I had no idea how to do that. Like if I had went out from my MBA intellectual strategic self, I would have exhausted myself. And I would have just been in despair. Now, I had moments of exhaustion. I had moments of despair, which is why I teach what I teach now, because I had to learn that me trying to manifest it or me trying to achieve it or me trying to accomplish something when I wasn't in co-creation caused a lot more suffering for me. It was harder. It cost more money. It usually didn't work out as well versus when I was really in co-creation with myself, with collaborators and people that came in to my field, with the people I was serving, and then also with the universe, like really, really with the universe. And one of the principles that I learned is that we are not in charge of form or timing. So let's break this down. This is still the first principle of we have to be clear on that intention, like what's at the center. And then we can draw a circle around it. And that circle is called the circle of commitment. And when you draw a circle of commitment around something, first of all, it creates like a container. It holds the thing that you're standing holding, that you're like, well, you're like with your staff or with your flag, right? That's in the ground. Actually, you're not holding it. The earth is holding it. Mother Earth is holding it. You want Mother Earth to hold it, you all, because if you try to hold it, burnout. Don't do that. We plant it in the ground. I always see it like a staff because it's like vertical. So it's connected to the cosmos. It's connected to the terrestrial. So it's on the celestial, it's connected, and it's on the terrestrial, it's connected. And that's important because it takes time. It takes time to bring things into manifestation. It takes time to co-create. This is what I love about co-creation. It's about the process. It's not about the goal, although we want to stop and we want to pause and we want to say we achieved this, we accomplished this, and celebrate. Absolutely. That's part of cyclical living and also keeping our radiance high. But we're in the process of this. And so it's like kind of making a soup or making a stew. Like you have to know, like I'm going to make beef stew. I'm going to make lamb stew. I'm going to make vegetable stew. When you start putting in the ingredients and you taste it and you add this, and it takes hours. But because it's in a pot, it's not like in a square pan, you stuff it in the oven. It's in a pot. It's in a container. It's in a cauldron. Whatever you're desiring to create for your life, whatever you're desiring to create for the world, whatever you're desiring to create for your organization, your team, your family, whatever you're desiring to create in the sacred work that you want to see in manifestation, you want to see that like, oh, it is on the ship. It's being delivered, right? That's how we can use manifest. It's in manifest form. It takes time. And usually we can expect longer than we think. Just think about anything that's really mattered to you that you have attempted to bring into form or create. And there's been times likely where, right, it sucked and you're like, gosh, I'm freaking tired. It's never going to happen. Why isn't it happening yet, right? And there's other times you're probably just like, oh my gosh, it happened so fast. I can't even, it came out of nowhere. But, didn't come out of nowhere because it was a seed within you for a long time, whether you were conscious to it or not. And so the principle that I'm just inviting us to embrace in this co-creation process, see the visual, put the stake in the ground, you're holding it, but it's being held by the earth, terrestrial, bringing things into manifest form, and the celestial, the bigger divine universe, right? And you are a channel, one of many for that to come through. And you have the circle of commitment around you, so it has a container. There's space in that container. And the thing is, and this is something to remember for the rest of our lives, release the form, release the timing, stay in connection to the essence. Release the form, release the timing, stay in connection to the essence. And this is why I love the word co-create, because it talks about creating from something that wouldn't naturally evolve or that's not made by the ordinary. It requires imagination. It requires to evolve out of our thinking. For those of you that have been around for a while, you've heard me say this before. For those of you who are new here, this is like a pink underline, gold underline moment. Our minds can only create what they've created before or see other people do. So if we can look to other people for inspiration, but other people's inspiration may not fit our design. So what we might see in somebody else is good to say, oh, like I would really love that too, but it will never look just like them. And so knowing your own design of like, how can that help me expand? But truly, truly, if you can imagine it, it can be. It may not look like you want it. It may not look, for sure, it's never when you want it. But if you can stay connected to the essence, what happens is as it starts to form, and when it does show up in manifest form, you know it. So a very tactical example is Noah and I actually have a common stake in the ground together, a common dream, and that is to live fully free, fully expressed, deeply resourced, and deeply nourished. That's our collective dream that we have in our partnership that we've been working now consciously for at least 5 years. Exhale. It's not 100% in form. And if you had told me 5 years ago that would mean I was living in Asheville, North Carolina, I would have told you were crazy, And but at the center of that dream, and we actually have it written out. We have again, using visual thinking. I made a drawing of this on my iPad and printed it out, and I just saw it. And Noah was cleaning his office today because we're trying to get the house, all set up. And I just saw it, and in the center of that it says Harmony Ranch. Because the question is, we were co-creating. So Noah and we co-create dreams with other people. I do this with my clients who I stand to their left as a leadership coach. I'm supporting them to co-create. If you are in relationship and you don't have a common dream, it's one of the reasons relationships, separate or just become kind of flat, is because there's no co-creative thing at the center. Or like if I'm working with a leader and I ask, what's at the purpose? Why are you all doing what you're doing? Or next week I'm doing a visioning session for a team. And we're going to start with like each of their individual why so they can know what their collective why is. And so that's just like, we need that at the center, right? And so Harmony Ranch, which is like, I have this vision, this dream of this, property that is, 3 to 5 acres out in the country somewhere, close to a city, and there's animals and it's clean and I can have people there and we can do retreats and there's a yoga barn. And when we moved to Asheville, we came here, every time we would go out to like look at places where there is this kind of land, because it is actually more accessible for me to do that here than it would have been on the West Coast, which is one of the reasons we made the move. My whole body was like, ugh, like I am not ready to live out in the country again. Like I just spent the last 7.5 years living 3.5 on an island, and before that 3.5 in wine country, which is kind of like its own island, creating and writing and founding schools. I'm like, I want to be in the village where I could walk out my door and walk to Pilates or take a short drive. And so I said to the universe, you know what? I'm not ready for Harmony Ranch, but I am ready for Harmony House. And I won't tell the whole story about how all this manifested, but I had that essence. Like I knew I would know when I got here. And one of the things I do when I'm co-creating, again, using visual thinking, but also using, and you want to write this word down or really take it in, is I dial into the frequency of what it is that I'm co-creating, the essence of it, right? So instead of like in the world of manifesting and form, you'd make a vision board and you put all these pictures on it and you would cut them out of a magazine and, all this stuff. And now you're looking at form. You're looking at form. You know what? The form is never going to match. You could manifest that. You can make that happen. But it's not necessarily going to be what fulfills your heart and soul, and it's likely not going to have the magic in it. So I draw out, and I've done this every single time the last 4 times we've moved. I draw a picture, like just kind of sketching out, like, my sketches look like a 5-year-old drew them. They're very whimsical. Just kind of intuitively draw it out, and then I start putting words and drawing little images, little doodles around. And things like, light filled and, surrounded by trees, and it feels this way and it feels that way. So I had the essence and the frequency in me. So I looked at Zillow and I looked at this and that, and I scrolled stuff and I was like, nope. And this is where purposeful patience, this is where we're going with the second principle, is I had to be in stillness. So the second principle, when we're in co-creation, is you cannot force. Well, you can, but that's not co-creation. You actually have to find the flow. And the flow is usually not on your timing and is not in the form you think. And so for me, when I did finally see this house on October 8th, it was right before our anniversary, I was like, I think that's it. I think that's it. And I've done this multiple times. I went from, what does that mean, right? So how do we not force things, but find the flow? So this is not, again, some mamby-pamby, like, self-help, rah-rah. This is like actual direction on how to live our lives. Do not force, find the flow. How do we find the flow? We use what I call the power spectrums. We use our masculine and feminine together in harmony. The power spectrums, for those of you that haven't ever done any work with me in feminine leadership or the feminine wisdom way, the power spectrums are a way to understand the dance between your masculine power and your feminine power, the yin and the yang, the water and the fire. And we've been in a water tiger year, and we're going into a water rabbit year, because we are literally in, as a culture, having to get that the feminine must lead within all of us. And then the fire, the form, comes up and supports. This is the practice of living right now. So if you imagine these power spectrums, okay, and I'm even taking my hand, and you could take your hand with me and move it like an infinity 8. And on the left is the feminine, the water. On the right is the masculine, the fire. And we need both of these. They're kind of also like a kayak paddle. So you can also try that. It's like you got the right side, you got the left side, and you're in the center. And when you're able to use both the sides and know, like, I'm going to lean in hard to the masculine, or I'm going to lean in hard to the feminine, knowing you can't do that all the time, because you would just go around in circles, which happens in this crazy world. Or people who get overstuck in the masculine, and the masculine distortions are just busy, do, achieve, go. And they don't even know that they're going around in circles, because it looks like that they're escalating, but they're not elevating necessarily. And they could also get stuck in the feminine, in the shadow of the feminine, and stagnation, and not moving into action. And that creates a different kind of distortion. So you want to be able to use both of these, and then have moments when you lean in, right? So I'm going to share, there's like over 20 power spectrums that I use and that I teach, but I'm going to share 3 today. And if you have a piece of paper, you might want to glyph these out again. Visual thinking, people, my dear friends, like it's so, for those of you that use it, go ahead and just nod your head like, I got it, right? For those of you that are like, can I just type it out on the computer? No, this is one of the things we have to make sure does not get swept away in the realm of technology. It's very important for humans to draw things with our hands. There's the hand that goes with the eyes, that goes with the body. If we're only on the computer, we are only in the mental. And if we are only in the mental, we are screwed as a world, and we will keep recapitulating things that should never happen on this planet. So this thing that seems so simple is actually profound, and it's really important we teach it to our children. It's why when I'm working in any capacity, like I have so many people that are journaling now. This is another one of the things. It's like just having a journal, and people who were like, serious executives be like, I don't journal. I'm like, dude, get some markers, and we are going to journal, because it just activates that whole imaginal side of us, and it bypasses the mental brain and gets us into our higher intelligence. So go ahead if you want to glyph these out. I'll share the 3. So the first one, and this is what I was just talking about, is stillness is on the left. Swiftness is on the right. Stillness is the feminine, it's the water. Swiftness is the fire, it's the masculine. When we put those 2 things together, what you get is aligned action. Best metaphor I have for this is the owl. If you think of an owl, which is a symbol for feminine wisdom, and also access to the mystery. Think Harry Potter, you all, right? Can you love Harry Potter, you all? Even if you don't like Harry Potter, isn't it just great that somebody made some movies and they created these movies, all those people, to be like, magic is real. It's not hocus pocus. It actually is real. And it isn't the magic that we think of, or pulling a rabbit out of a hat. It is this co-creative power that is the magic. When we have it in our lives, oh my God, our lives feel so much more enriched versus just like tick-tock, robot, get up, do it again. Co-creativity is like crazy powerful medicine for anxiety and depression. When I'm not co-creating, I definitely can sink into those kind of lower vibrations of sadness and get stuck there, So the co-creativity in these practices, whether it's journaling or visual thinking or cyclical living or mantra, like it's what pulls me out of getting stuck in the malaise. So this one here, the stillness, think of like an owl who's like just hanging out. The owl's not like not paying attention. If you look at an owl, you'll see their ears are up. They're completely in that stillness, taking everything in. They're just not wasting their chi, their energy to be like a, Energizer bunny or a chicken on the barn floor, running around networking and running around doing all the things and running around having to post 8,000 posts and do this and do that and go to this meeting and go to that meeting. They're still. And then when they see what they want and what is in alignment, they move with fierce focus, whoosh, swift, not fast, not quick. Fast, quick, that actually is distorted. And that's part of what our culture values. And so we're like, if we're not moving fast, if we're not moving quick, fast and quick, I mean, like there are, even like in emergencies, like I remember when Noah had his stroke, I moved swiftly. I took a moment, I paused, and I'm like, what is needed? Like, Christine, swiftly move, call 911. Okay, now what is needed? Now what is needed? And because of my practice, my meditation practice, my oracling practice, all the practices that keep me in relationship to this bigger force and to my, which is the next one, intuition, I can move in swiftness. You don't wait, and this is the third principle that we're going to go to. You don't wait for the shit to hit the fan to be like, oh shit, I got to get a house or I got to do whatever. We do the practices so that when it does get tough, we can move through, we can find the flow and move through it. So the example of me with this house was still, waiting for the essence, waiting for the frequency. And then when I saw it, I moved in, whoosh, and then I came here to this house and I allowed myself to feel it, not be attached. And then in that process of co-creativity, after over a couple of weeks, and it was like, okay, this is your place. And the house is literally golden green, which is the color of harmony. So, can't make this shit up. So that's a very practical example of how we use that power spectrum. The second power spectrum is intuition on the left, feminine, water, and intellect on the right, masculine, fire. And together, those create access to wisdom. It gave you access to your higher intelligence. That's not just coming from the mind, it's actual intelligence. So in our culture, we've been told that the intellect means intelligence, and intuition is woo-woo, poo-poo, not really real because it's invisible. Well, that, of course, is complete BS and part of the reason why so many people, it's so easy for people to be controlled because they don't trust themselves and they have no idea how their intuition works. Now, I know if you're here, you have some idea, perhaps you even teach it, and perhaps it's new to you. Perhaps you're somewhere in between it. What I can say about this one is what I see when it comes to co-creation, even with really evolved humans, in the places when it really stretches them, usually money, relationship. Yeah, those are kind of the big ones, sometimes career. When the stuff gets hard, they will revert to their distortion. They'll usually someone will revert to intellect. And so distorted intellect is over rational, over logical. If you can't prove it, it's not real. And some do go over to the distorted intuition, magical thinking, because they just don't want to be with what's real. Neither of those are where you want to be. You want to be able to move through these. And we all have those. That's part of when we work with the power spectrums of knowing where your distortions show up. But just taking a moment and think of something that you're in co-creation with that may not be coming into form as quickly as you would like it, as swiftly as you would like it, or that isn't showing up in the timing, or isn't just manifesting on the physical realm the way you thought or intended. I have to tell you, the self-love work did not manifest the way that I thought it would at all. But I met my mission, I met my purpose, which was, for self-love to become as normal as table salt, which it is acceptable in so many more ways than it was before. And so now I can choose, I feel like I did my part in that. It wasn't just me, but I did my part. And now I can take that work and I can use it however I decide to use it. I'm not done using it, but I'm sitting with, what's the next evolution of that work and how can I best use it now at this time that while even a lot of the self-love work that I see out there is taught, not all of it, but a lot of it is superficial and or just kind of base level. I met the mission, and so now that it's about how do we educate. So when you have something that's like your life's work, you all, like, it's going to continue to evolve. Thinking of a beloved I've worked with who was helping her get her body of work into the world. And she'd been doing the work for a long time, but there was a specific way she wanted that body of work to come in. She's a functional nutritionist. And by going deeper into the feminine, came out with this book that she had been wanting to write that has her formula for how she actually works with women, especially around weight loss and health. And by being in that incubator together, in this co-creative container together, she and I, it allowed her to open up these pieces within herself that allowed that to come through for herself. And it didn't come through exactly as she thought it would, but she did end up with the book, that physical form. It took much longer because books always do. They just always take longer. And now she has this body of work that is in form that makes it easier for her to teach and speak and talk the way that she wanted to. But it's like this part of, for all of us, just knowing like, okay, like this is the third power spectrum. Surrender on the left, strategize on the right. Very important for co-creation. So surrender is like, the universe has got to show me. One of the best practices you can do to support yourself in surrender is in your morning practices. It's just such a simple practice. It is divine, universe, force, whatever your cosmology is around that, but inviting in grace, whatever that is for you. Play me like a finely tuned instrument in your orchestra. Show me. Play me like a finely tuned instrument in your orchestra. Show me. Goes back to where we started today of like you being this instrument in this orchestra. You're not alone. We all have a part to play. And the universe is kind of like the grand conductor of all of this. And we're actually co-creating it. We'll talk more about this in the next session of the session after, like how we're co-creating this story that we are evolving as humans right now. And what is that story? We're all part of it. And what is your part in it? And so that surrender part, very simple practice, is that, I think of it as a surrender prayer, but it's really more to me an invitation. And then show me. And so it's invitation, show me. So if you not heard me say that, or you have heard me say that before, I use that almost every day. And when I forget, I have Feminine Wisdom Way and Cyclical Living to remind me. I'm like, oh yeah, we remember that one, show me. So that's another one. Strategy is using that intellect, right? To like, okay, like if this is where I want to go and this is what I want to co-create as my reality. And maybe even are some of the milestones I'd love to achieve. Where do I focus my energy? Where do you focus your energy? Think about what you're doing, what you're wanting to co-create right now. There's a million ways that you could focus your energy. And if you try to focus your energy in a million different ways, or even 10 different ways, you're going to fragment your energy and you're going to either be exhausted or you won't end up actually achieving what you're desiring to co-create. And you won't even be able to you won't have the trust to be able to co-create more than you could even imagine, because you're going to be so like, it's not about being super focused. So that's the shadow, that's the distortion of strategy. I have to do this and I have to do this and I have to do this. I was recently in a mastermind with a group of people, and they were so focused on the strategy, they had forgotten the surrender and the co-creation part. And so it was like mental ping pong. Oh, I have to do this and I do this and I'll get this. If there, then this will happen. And sometimes there are strategies, there are formulas. I mean, in the book world, there are formulas, and you can, literally do certain things and pay certain amounts of money, and you can become a New York Times bestseller. Not everybody, but pretty much. If there's literally there are formulas to do that, which is partly what has disillusioned me about the book business. I mean, I will continue to be an author, but there are all these shenanigans that happen in all industries that you can run the formula. And for me, and again, nothing against maybe someone that was their deal, like they needed to be a New York Times bestseller. So, paying $30,000 to the guy that does the books or whatever, or to Amazon, they're like, good. But for me, my design, and again, this is where it comes back to our own design, is the strategy has to be right for us. And that's not my way. That's not, I can't, like, it would be false. To me, it would be false. It might not be false to them, but for me, my design, that strategy doesn't work. And so when I talk about strategy and the surrender and strategy, and this is probably going to need to be another podcast series, but just to underline it, this is so much love about self-acceptance and self-awareness and knowing who you are and knowing your design and knowing your part and knowing how you're even meant to live your life and your design. And kind of like the woman I talked about way back when, who, she's an amazing woman. So she's like, I want $1 million business. And she did it. And it wasn't even the business that she wanted. And she wasn't happy. And, it was kind of her catalyst to her awakening. And now she's actually doing what she's here to do. And her design is differently. She actually just started an organic farm with her beloved. And she comes from she's a refugee here. Well, I don't know if you would call it. Her family came from a different place. So they got kicked out of their country, were refugees, and then came here. But they were farmers. So she's going back to these roots of this farming. Like now there's got total body chills. Like this is her design. And when we don't live our design, you could apply every freaking strategy in the book and you might get it, but it's not going to fulfill you. And it might even make you sick. And so this is where that surrender comes in. And then being able to say, okay, I am really leading from the feminine. I'm leading from surrender. I'm leading from co-creation. And then if that's the truth, if I'm going to do that, then what's the strategy that's right for me? Where do I focus? What do I say yes to? What do you say no to? Taking a breath with that. It's, another podcast for us to talk about, but it is one of the things that, I don't know if I don't have it makes me sad. It makes me mad. It makes me want to scream up and down like the heat miser sometimes. And it also wants me to stand still with my staff, why I do the work I do, is because there's so much out there telling us how we have to do it. And I know within you the codex of how you are meant to live your life design and how you are meant to give your gifts and your genius and the contribution you're making, whether anyone ever knows that it happened, because it's not about how many followers you have or this or that, unless that's your design. There's so many people doing so many things that really matter. And just, however this podcast can be a support for you to keep coming home to yourself, keep coming back to the relationship with yourself, to the relationship with your part. It's going to evolve. It's going to shift. It's going to, it's for me, this next part of my career really, I put the 2 schools in place. The Path of Self-Love is there. The Feminine Wisdom Way is there. And the councils are there. And for me, focusing on leadership and well-being is where the world's finally ready for me to be at. So I will continue to show up in all the ways that I do here in the ways that are in my design. And finally, what I've been waiting for, like for 7 years, is like, oh my gosh, the world's ready for it. So I'm so excited because I'm able to live more of my natural design, which is so much more about relationship. So much more about relationship than being in the spotlight and trying to be seen. It is literally not in my design to do that. It doesn't work. And so I'm happy that, I've had the patience to allow it to come into form. And this is that part of co-creation. Sometimes the world's not ready for what we have. And so we think that we're behind or we think we've missed it, but nope, it was still there, still in the seeding part. And so just knowing that for yourself, like just kind of feeling like, where might purposeful patience serve you? Or like with Noah right now, he's been kind of in the land of purposeful patience, but he needs more fire. I need more water. He needs more fire. So like, what's going to serve you in your co-creation? More fire or more water right now? And then I'll kind of wrap us into our third one here, the last principle is that co-creation requires us to be in relationship. It requires us to be in regular communication and relationship with ourselves, with our design. I got my hand on my heart, our heart design, our soul design. Like, who are you? What is going on with you? What is true for you? What is right for you? And that's where these practices, like you need them to stay in connection with what is true for you. It's also being in relationship with others. And we are not, whatever is coming next, it's all about the yoga of collaboration. Like, we will be in conscious collaboration. This is not the time of the lone wolf. It is not about bootstrapping it ourselves. It really has to be done in collaboration. And then there's in relationship to the world. Like, how do you be in relationship to the world, what it's going on, without getting pulled into the drama and the trauma of it? And then there's a relationship with the universe, whatever I would call your divine downline is, whether it's sitting with nature, it's a direct relationship with the divine, with God, spirit, whatever that is, the force for you. Don't wait to create these relationships. Make these practices part of your life. And some of you have already. I mean, this is what we do here all the time. So just where are those practices of co-creation that you're already doing? You know, it could be the journaling or the meditating or the oracling or the visual thinking or the nature walking or the just, making pottery like I'm doing, but bringing in that co-creation part. Maybe that's the part of the part that's missing. And, or I mentioned many of them here. The show me prayer is one. Another one that I love, I'll leave us on, but I really wanted to give you 3 of the core principles, plus also just invite you to think about the different, ways we go about things in the world, doing, making, manifesting, creating, etc. And then maybe considering just opening up your heart and looking around at the things that you're intending to bring into this world, and what might shift if you were to put that, see it as, even draw this out, draw a circle, put a circle in the center of the circle, and what's at the center of your life design? What's at the center of your sacred work? What's at the center of your relationships? This is part of what we'll be doing at the Wisdom Quest this year, and was just part of cyclical living. But that's one action you can take to elevate yourself right now. And then I would invite you to invite a friend into this conversation, just with this real, what's at the center of your life design right now and what you want to co-create going forward. What's at the center of your work, your career, your sacred work now, and what you want to be creating, and what's at the center of your relationships. And talk to each other about it. This is one of the powers of one of the practices of co-creation is inquiry. It's not about the answer, it's about having the right inquiry to ask. So that would be, we don't like to give homework here, but it would be more like your co-creative project to be in relationship. And one of the things that you can do was you start to journal around that and walk on that and muse on that and moodle on that. 2 things. One is you can use the inquiry, I wonder how that would come into form, because we cut ourselves off. We're like, oh, that could never happen. That could never happen. That's not where we're at right now. I want you to be in the wondering. I want you to be in the intending of this is actually what I desire to create. And then you can say, I wonder, or show me, and play with those. And just wanted to send you off with a lot of love. And if you're liking what you're hearing, always appreciate a review. You just go to the show on your podcast app and or on iTunes and leave a review. It just helps more people find us. And or just forward this to someone you know. It would help, and that you might like to have a conversation with about it. So continue to elevate, dear ones, and I will see you on the other side. Co-create and elevate, or elevate and co-create. I'll see you next time. Much love.
All right, wise beings, welcome back. I don't know about you, but for me, listening to the principles of co-creation is both inspiring and grounding. It's a reminder that we're all in a process, and it doesn't happen overnight, and we're not alone. Like nature, co-creation takes her time, and we're all interconnected. I love so many things about this episode, and I'm going to highlight a couple of them here that have really supported me in my journey from overachiever, driver, and striver to being someone who practices co creation. So, first, the importance of the words we speak. I love that Christine started here and that she's always illuminating the wisdom of the meaning and roots and origins of words for us so that we can be intentional and conscious of the words we use. And why is this so important? Well, the spoken word is made up of frequency, sound frequency, and energetic frequency. It's vibration. And I love how Christine focused so much on this because it is so important. It's transformative. I have a background in both music and more recently yogic philosophy and the practice. And one of my favorite and most transformative yoga practices is called Bhakti Yoga. It's the yoga of the heart, the yoga of love. And the practice of Bhakti Yoga is the repetition of mantra or chanting, which Christine talked about in the episode. So one of the quotes that I love that describes the practice of mantra is that mantra is a practice that, through the repetition of sacred sounds, and remember, sacred just means devoted to wholeness. The repetition of sacred sounds polishes the mirror of the soul. Mantra polishes the mirror of the soul. Now, mantra, to borrow a page from Christine's wisdom book, explaining the root of this word, mantra is actually a Sanskrit word that means tool for the mind. Man, mind, tra, tool. And mantra is a tool to allow our minds to drop into meditation, to connect in and drop into our hearts. Now, I've had a mantra practice for about 16 years. And for many of those years, it was a daily practice. Other times, at other intensities, it was less than that. But more recently, I've recommitted to my daily practice. And it takes all of maybe 5 minutes. I practice usually in the evening before going to bed, because for me as a mother, that's just a time when I can really count on having a quiet place to myself. And I tell you all, it's made such a difference. I'm attuning to the frequency of love and to the vibration and rhythm of the earth, the Nad, as Christine mentioned. Now, if you're new to mantra practice, a great way to begin, and how I began, is simply to listen to mantras daily. I started by just listening to mantra music, and surprisingly quickly, I found myself singing along. Even though I didn't know the language, I hadn't seen the words written out, it just flowed through me. So if you'd like recommendations of mantra artists to tune into, I'll include them in the show notes. And now circling back to the language we speak. This is a powerful form of personal leadership. Our power to affect our own vibration through the words we use, and as the words that we speak are usually shared with others, this frequency is also elevating others through our relationships and communication. Language is so important because it's how we communicate our mindset so it can shape our own mindset, and we can use language, both the intentional use of it and the intentional non-use of certain words. We can use it to shift our mindsets, which is such a powerful tool for co-creating and elevating. And finally, on the topic of mantra and language, Christine shared several wisdom mantras in this episode, and I just wanted to highlight them for you here now. These are so good, you all, so I encourage you to take out a pen and write them down. Put them on Post-it notes where you can see them every day, and in the moments where you get discouraged or feel like nothing's happening or it's not happening on your timetable, read these, say them out loud, repeat them to yourself. Okay, so number 1, release the form, release the timing, stay in connection to the essence. Release the form, release the timing, stay in connection to the essence. And number 2, do not force, find the flow. Do not force, find the flow. Just saying those helps me to lower my blood pressure and increase my trust that everything is unfolding for my highest good. And the second piece I'd like to share is the power of mindset shifts, right? So language leads to mindset shifts. And a mindset shift that I love in this episode is that of moving from working hard to succeed to working wise to thrive. and the distinction between chasing achievements and accomplishments versus, yes, celebrating them along the way, but starting out and always attuning our compass to our big why. So I'll share a little story about how this has shown up in my life and how I've used feminine wisdom to shift my mindset and shift my reality. So I've lived my life in the past chasing after and catching the roles and responsibilities, the jobs and the career that everyone else wanted. And like the client example that Christine shared earlier, once I obtained what I was chasing, the resonance wasn't there. I looked around and I thought, what am I doing here? And I was miserable. I said no more to that path. Actually, just before Christine's path crossed with mine about 15 years ago, and I struck out on my own. But really, I didn't do this wisely. I just burned everything down and tried to build without a stable foundation. And there was a lot of creating from the wounds of the past. And it was a little bit better because I wasn't chasing other people's dreams anymore, but it still wasn't sustainable. And it was also not really aligned with my true purpose in this lifetime because I wasn't clear on my big why. I finally began seeing glimpses of this big why when I began my in-depth study of the feminine and feminine wisdom. And it's been over 12 years now, peeling away the layers, layer after layer after layer, until about 2 years ago, I had shed enough of the old skins to be able to receive clear guidance on my big why. And you know what? I've been patiently, purposefully, intentionally steering the ship of my life towards that North Star of my big why for the past almost 2 years. It's required more shedding, a lot of trust, tough decisions, and the great work piece of it is just now beginning to come into form. But that's my typical visionary to material reality timeline, 3 years. That's the time it historically takes from when I receive the vision to when it's present in form in my life. And something that's really supported me through these past 2 years and the, 10 years before that is the community and cyclical living structure of the Feminine Wisdom Way. The visual thinking, the inquiries, and the cyclical reconnection to my big why, the celebrating incremental progress, accomplishments, and achievements, it's helped me to ride the waves of this time span. And that's where the future of our elevation and evolution lies. It's in community, it's in relationship. Which brings me to the last piece I'd like to share, which is an invitation for you to bring this wisdom of co-creation practically into your life and to share it with others through the practice of inquiry. As Christine mentioned, one of the foundational practices of co-creation is inquiry. So for this week, the inquiry you're invited to contemplate is, what's at the center of your life design? What's at the center of your life design? And I also invite you to play with the I wonder and the show me as part of this, especially to get the co-creative energy flowing. Better yet, share this podcast with a friend and invite them to conversate on this inquiry with you. We'll also be posting the inquiry up in the Feminine Wisdom Cafe over the next week, so you can drop in there and connect and share what's coming up for you. Christine and I are there too, and we would be delighted to connect with you and witness your journey. I'll put a link to the Feminine Wisdom Cafe in the show notes as well. And then join us next week when we'll be conversating on aligning your work to your well-being. This will be the final episode, 9 of 9, in the season of light, where we'll share wisdom around aligning what you're co-creating to put your well-being at the center. Imagine a world in which we all placed well-being as the foundation of our lives and designed our work around it. I hope you'll join us. Looking forward to being with you again, sending you all off with much love.